this is interesting because we've talked about, quote unquote esports and professional gaming and stuff like that a number of times. And we have varying opinions on it. We agree that I think it takes skill.
Yeah,
obviously
it takes
skill.
To be a good gamer.
It's not necessarily. I think we both kind of agree it's not really an athlete. Anyways, the Utah Jazz, the small forward Gordon Hayward,
good player.
Has come out, averaged 19.3 points a game, according to this. He's come out and said that professional gamers train just as hard as professional athletes. And it's weird because on some levels I agree with him, but I feel like the phrasing is odd.
He's a gamer.
Sure, he is a gamer. Yeah. And he plays, I believe he plays some things competitively as well. So my take on this is that, yes, to become very good at a certain video game, whether you are chasing an asteroid's high score or you've spent 8 years of your life on Street Fighter 4, you are putting in a serious time commitment. I'm not sure that a lot of people understand how much of a time commitment that sort of thing is. But is it as athletically vigorous? That's the sort of thing that I don't know. What I'm saying is I'm not trying to take one thing away from pro gaming or athletes, but I still think it's just, I hate the term because they're both fucking fruit, but it's kind of an apples and oranges sort of thing. Yes, they both take extreme amounts of dedication, but I don't know that you could consider that same sort of rigorous training the same as athletic rigorous training.
No, this is the way I look at it. In terms of pro gaming, you always have in certain genres, you have the game du jour or a few, so you have League of Legends is always big for the MOBA genre. But for something like, you have StarCraft 2 for the strategy games. Before that was the first StarCraft, was a game played. Street Fighter 5 is going to be a big one. It's been Street Fighter 4 for the past, It's been out for 6 years, Street Fighter 4?
8.
8 years, okay. But in terms of all these games, when they come out, they start running tournaments for these games relatively quickly, correct? So when Street Fighter 5 comes out, you're going to have tournaments later this year probably I'm assuming.
Well, yeah, and I'll touch on that during our Street Fighter topic. But
so you have people, the moment the game comes out, people start playing it to train to be a professional gamer. And I'm assuming that for these strategy games that are played, for whatever add-ons come out or expansions come out for these fighting games, for games like Call of Duty. Is there professional Call of Duty players? I don't know. But the whole point is that when these games come out, there's no such thing as a professional really as they start until these tournaments begin. That's what establishes you as professional in these, is that are you good enough to make it and get paid at these events to qualify and do it. It's a totally different mindset to me versus training to be a pro athlete. Because when you're training to be a pro athlete, first of all, you have to be gifted to start certain sports. You can be a great player, but there weren't that many great players in basketball below 6 feet tall. Talk about Spud Webb, Muggsy Bogues, maybe one or two others, and then you pretty much run dry of guys that were in the league that were successful below 6 feet. You have to be genetically gifted to be a good football player, especially football, especially basketball. Baseball, you can get away with it. Hockey, you can get away with a little bit less, but you still got to be big. You got to be gifted to begin with. And then it requires, if you want to be a pro basketball player, you better start when you're 6 years old. You better work hard at it. You better work your ass off in high school. You better work your ass off in college. And even then, in basketball, there's only literally, in the NBA, you're talking 300 players in the NBA, something like that. That's a very low amount. Yes, there's pro players in Europe, but you want to get to the NBA, and you're trying to go for 300 spots. And if you can't get into that, you can't get into it, and you're done. So I think there's the risk, the reward risk is a lot higher for these athletes, just because you can work out your whole life for your shot. You can be awesome in college. You get an injury, your knee pops, you're done. You're fucking done. All
right.
your 15 years of training, you got absolutely nothing to show for it. Nothing. So that's not to disrespect the pro gamer, but to get into pro sports to me is a lot less versus to get into pro gaming, just because of that.
A lot more.
That's what I mean. There's a lot less you have to look into it.
I agree with you on most of these points, but I would counter with two things. For certain things, I believe let's use like something like Street Fighter, for example, Street Fighter 4. You do have to, I believe, have an innate skill for some of these games. Once these games got to legitimate combo systems that utilized single frame links that we're talking like 1 frame in a 60 frame per second game, your fine motor skills and dexterity have to be pretty well fucking developed. I don't have good fine motor skills for various reasons, and because of that, there's a certain level that I would reach for the fighting game and not be able to continue, whereas someone else with better fine motor skills could. So I'm not saying it's the same, but
that'd be same as a pro athlete that's gifted. If you're 6'5", 240 pounds, you have a lot better chance of getting the NFL than me.
And then the only other thing I would say is that I don't necessarily agree 100% with it starts when a game comes out. Most of these people who play fighting games, let's take Daigo, for instance, who I believe is starting to stream Street Fighter 5 this weekend, and is constantly at the top of tournaments, has had numerous famous matches. You're not starting just at Street Fighter 4. Yes, you're starting with a new system, but the dexterity and the skills you've learned to look for combos is something that you've been working on since the modern era, probably, of Capcom fighting games. So it's not like it just starts at Street Fighter 4 and then there's 8 years. These people have been playing since, like, Street Fighter 3, King of Fighters. These are all skills that they learn from those games that transfer to newer games.
Sure, but for that, this is different than, to me, than a sport, because you're starting off anew. Like, the pool starts anew. Whether or not some people have an innate advantage, the pool starts anew. You can be a 15-year-old that this is their first game, and if they're good enough, maybe they can be a pro gamer, versus like someone that's 30 that's getting into it and they've played 3 other games professionally before that, and they're going to get into Street Fighter 5. Am I saying something insane?
No, I'm not looking at you like you're insane. I'm
just saying,
I'm mulling it over in my head.
That's the difference between that and a pro sport. Where a pro sport, you would have to have trained at that sport for literally almost your entire life in order to be a professional.
I'm not arguing that. I'm just saying that the skills carry over, and even though you might be learning new systems and new techniques, it's not like you're starting fresh. And yes, a 15-year-old who starts on Street Fighter 4 is likely going to have trouble in the higher tiers against people who have been playing fighting games their whole life.
But they might have that better reactions versus someone who's 30, 35.
That's potentially true.
Because I think you brought it up, and I've read it, that when you get to your late 20s, your reactions start going down.
Yeah.
That's just the way it is. So it may be tougher for me to get started in a fighting game, but maybe I could be a pro gamer at a League of Legends, because you don't need that twitchy reactions as much, so maybe I could be a pro at that. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know.
In some aspects here, I'm simply playing devil's advocate, but sure. It's interesting to mull over.
I just think it's interesting that this goes back to the whole Twin Galaxies thing, where Gordon Hayward felt the need to defend gaming when it's silly, especially nowadays when you talk about all the professional athletes nowadays, and these are a lot of guys that unfortunately are younger than us, that these guys have been playing video games all their lives. Like, it's a part of them. Like, when they go out, they always say, yeah, we're in the hotel room or we're hanging out in the locker room. They play video games. They play sports games, and they're not like, they're not divorced from it. Going back to when we were kids, I knew lots of kids that played sports that were big athletes. They also played video games. It wasn't like one or the other.
Yeah.
And
that's been a common misconception forever.
Yeah, and so for pro athletes, I don't see it a big shock that to say, oh, I play video games and I'm a pro athlete. That's not like a big deal anymore. We talked about it.
Right. You're not a unicorn.
We talked about it in Conan O'Brien a year ago when they had Marshawn Lynch and Gronkowski playing Mortal Kombat with Conan O'Brien, and they're all having fun. It's like, yeah, why wouldn't you have fun playing video games?
Well, and like one of my favorite things to pop in and watch every once in a while is a little bit of Xavier Woods' Up, Up, Down, Down, where like him and all the WWE stars sit around and just play games with each other. I mean, this is, you can, definitions of athletes aside.
There are other athletes, pro wrestlers.
I agree too. I'm just referring to the people who will probably take umbrage with that. Yeah, it's fun. It's kind of, there's something kind of fun about watching these people do that, though. Anyway,
so I guess we're in agreement for the most part.
I mean, as always, we're kind of somewhere.
I just think it comes back to, again, it's the risk reward sort of thing and the amount of time put into it too. You know, I just don't like when people are so quick to have them be totally equal, when it's like,
Sure,
that's sort of disrespectful to someone that's worked 20 years to get somewhere and then still is toiling and may not ever see it.
and I think it can go both ways.